Kia ora, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm listening. I'm just having a bit of dinner, so I'll just turn my thing off, okay?
Kia ora, Candy.
Kia ora, Mike.
Kia ora.
How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Thank you. How are you, Councillor?
No, very good, thanks. Very good. Oh, here's some people starting to come in now. Oh, you tricked me, Candy. Actually, I thought you were alive, smiling at me. Hey, Steve.
Hi.
We'll just give it a couple of minutes and wait for a few others to come in. That's all good. Introduce yourself. Or John. Oh, I'm sure you guys are not shy.
Good evening. Yeah, I'm in Raglan and been interested in this ever since we persuaded the council to start looking at it rather belatedly, and then it's made rather more progress with Watercare. So congratulations to those in Watercare who've been pushing it ahead, particularly Steve. So thanks very much.
Right, right. Peter, you there? You might be in and out, but what we'll do is welcome again, and we'll just kick on with it and hand it over to Steve.
Okay.
Is that correct? Yep.
Thanks for that. We can share the PowerPoint, Priya.
Yeah. Can you see my screen, Steve?
That's perfect.
Yes, we can see it, and there's and just is there a down the bottom just to get rid of this the slides on the side, just get a full screen. Just down the bottom there. Go to the next one too. Yeah, do that one. Okay, cool. Thanks. I've got three sort of topics I was keen just to cover tonight. First is just an update on where we've gone since the last session last month. Again, and the second part was just to cover some key sort of documents that are now up on our website. Again, talked about this last month, but there was just this is just a good opportunity just to tease it out a little bit and just highlight how things are can move forward with this project. The third is just a bit of a I found it really interesting myself just to really understand more how subsurface drip works around the country, and so I was just going to try and dumb it down to the point where I can understand it and help maybe others understand it as well. So hopefully that works, and I will ask you to just change the slide, Priya, or next. Thanks. Yeah, so this was the slide from last month, and I've had some detail in blue, and then I've put the updates in red. So so last month we talked about works underway in progress. This included conveyance studies and some wider. This is with some wider corridor planning that's happening for the growth, because we know that these growth nodes in Waikato 2070 are within the proposed district plan. So in terms of work that is progressing now, we're still working through the conveyance, the theoretical conveyance, say from the wastewater treatment plant to the investigation site. Just theoretically it's needed, because as part of this you break it down and then you can get a cost estimate, and that becomes a critical factor for managers and decision makers to understand, to do that, there's a need to really dig into the investigations for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, which is, just as a reminder, it's a great success and an achievement. An MBR has been selected is the best option for a treatment upgrade, and so as part of getting that together and meeting the Waikato Regional Council's needs and expectations for a permeate that meets the consent conditions, you do a basis of design, which is really understanding how it's going to work, and it's the next step before actual getting construction underway. So with that basis for design completed, which is going to be happening in the end of April, there'll be better understanding of flows, and that sort of is used for the conveyance, so you can better size the pipes and get a theoretical cost of all these things. The MBR is a definite, that's happening. The conveyance studies are part of the consideration for the option. So the end of April for the conveyance and pumping studies to be completed, and then costing can be finalised. The other critical. Oh, sorry. Can you keep it there, Priya? The next activity is moving a private subsurface drip irrigation scenario from theoretical, which it's at the moment, to something that's actually quite feasible. And to do that, the first phase would be to have ability to get real and really talk about a securement strategy or securement way to get that with the landowner. So that's a WDC-led activity. It's very, very specialised and time-consuming work. I don't envy property people, but we've got the right people for the difficulty in their jobs, but we've got the right people working on that alongside our growth and infrastructure and growth manager. So that's just a memorandum of understanding is something that's entered into for lots of these things. It's just to say there's a willingness to continue working in a partnership to get to a solution. To this date, we've just been really it's been really great just to have the ability to investigate the site and do theoretical studies. Assigning an MU will take us to the next level. So again, I'm working with Hazel. I'm just keeping in the loop with Hazel, who's the infrastructure planning growth manager, and also our property team, just to understand how that's going. We can keep everyone updated as that progresses. The third point I have here is just working towards the next step from going from the long list, which is, it has been years since we've done the long list of every single option, shortened to the short list. The short list had theoretical options that existed. They public land, we spent a lot of time talking about that in sessions past. There's the status quo, which is obviously abhorrent, is still an option. And the third one was, I guess, the understanding of private land solution is a realistic option rather than just a theoretical option. The above two activities will help determine that and lead to next steps thereafter. So again, it sort of leads on to the next set of slides where I really want to talk about how do you get to the determine of best practical option determination. The key thing there is and I've had queries like this, where does the community and Hapu sit with all this? Are we just spectators? And the answer is definitely not. And it's not just a technically led system. There's lenses, there's governance and board, and it's very critical decision making. So I was hoping just to share a little bit about that, how I think I've talked with our lead consultant, Garrett, who's a technical lead, and he's been really great with advising on the way to get to this next stage with when the detail is better understood in terms of cost, conveyance, and ability to secure land. The ability to secure land doesn't mean that it's just you go out and buy it. There's lots of other things to happen before then. So can you change this next slide, please, Priya? There's a hand up.
Yep. Yeah, look, Steve, a couple of things. So just on that previous slide, so you know, it looks like it's moved around a bit. Like a long time ago, you were talking about Wainui Reserve, and then I heard you were talking about the land below the refuse transfer station, and now it looks like you moved right back, well back out of town, up and quite high up there. Is that red? Is that the 20 hectares you're looking at? Is it in the outline in red?
Yeah, there's that's right. That just shows the progress. I mean, how this is rolled out over these years. That is that site there is larger than it's the investigation site. It's part of the landowner's farm, and there would have been it's beyond 20 hectares, but within that sort of area, there's a 20 hectare areas. With anything in Raglan, you're never going to get a nice flat pad of the prime soils. So yeah, that's correct. That's what we're looking at as a subject site for investigation.
Yeah, all right. So that is, you know, just in terms of reticulating out to there is going to be quite a mission, just because of how far the town is. You know,
yeah, I know that's right.
And getting it there.
That's cool. There's actually it's good, and it's a challenge with all sorts, with every sort of different discharge scenarios for this township and others. Conveyance is a big thing. You're going to have huge pumps, but other places do it. Tiano pumps 20 kilometers per hour, but here they've got the height as well. But the interesting thing is I've got the urban edge there with the Waikato 2070 and the growth nodes. It's going to I mean, it's farmland at the moment, greenfields, but it's programmed to develop right to this point here, this urban edge, in the 10 to 30 years. So it becomes increasingly closer to the site. It isn't. Okay. It is.
Yeah, no, that answers that question. So in terms of the current system you're putting in, you know, timeframes on it, when's that likely to be? This is the treatment system that's currently approved, and when's that likely to be operating?
Oh, I've had it. You, Keith, can you answer? I've had it in my mind at some point. It's gone now.
2025, 2026. So the plant financing has been approved. It's now in design. So it's imminent. And from a conveyancing perspective, if I can just add to that too, because it's a high quality treated effluent, the conveyancing is very similar to conveying that of potable water. There's no slurries or anything that we need to move, no rag or anything like that. It is, for intents and purposes, just clean water. So yes, we still have to pump it, but the mechanisms are well known, and it's virtually the same as we would do for potable water.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Mike. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, so I think I've just saying that the last bit of the discussion, what's the decision making progress? I've sort of mapped it out a little bit, and I've just wanted to present it in the next couple of slides. So Priya, can you change over? Yeah, so here I've just on the left, I've put a link to a consenting snapshot that went up. Talked about it last month at our hui, and it just gives a broad brush description of things that have gone on in the past up to status quo. And I just pulled out some two key lines I was hoping just to cover a little bit. So saying with any in principle agreement, i.e. an MOU, which is moving us closer towards a hopeful securement of some land for a private land discharge, or at least it becomes part of the options that can be considered together. There'd be some sort of confidence actually in investigating in a more intensive manner to understand assessment of the environmental effects and also the workability of a scheme, which might be a small pilot part. But to do this, we really have to. It'll be an expense to a point where we would be bringing papers up to the Water Governance Board, which is a board that meets monthly, and many projects go up to them. It's a very clear lens, and it's a very robust process of getting a paper together and getting it reviewed by the governance board, who are again the project owners on behalf of WDC, with which their CEO sits amongst it, and Keith can talk about it more. But the CEO and the governance board is the same with the relationship with the CEO and the councillors. It's a very high tier of management. Keith, I don't know if there's anything more to add to it, but I was just going to say that this is how I envisage it would be happening. We'll be presenting a paper to the Water Governance Board, bringing together a lot of key critical information, connecting some dots. First, the securement status. What's the description there? How are we going? Are we moving towards a space where we can get it at, we can secure some land? Is it a lease? Is it a subdivision? Again, how is that happening? There's be some description that needs to come through from those specialists working on there. The project costs.
The Water Governance Board will test the hypothesis and the theory and ensure that the business case is sound. So they'll deal with that from a infrastructure governance perspective. From a spending perspective, if it's within the LTP, they'll make recommendations to council that the funding be released from within the LTP. It's still up to the infrastructure committee and council to finally approve funding. So that's council still holds the final say so in terms of releasing of funds, and that it meets with council strategy in terms of infrastructure development.
Yeah, thanks. Again, part of that, there'd have to be a look at all of the existing feasible options together, and an analysis against the project objectives, which were drafted at the very, very onset of this project alongside the community and hapu. They haven't changed, and they won't change unless there's a change request. It hasn't had to be. They've been a very good guiding set of objectives. And again, the Water Governance Board will be, as with everything, what are the processes in place to engage with community, mana whenua, tangata whenua. With WDC, we've got the Gearing for Growth, which is a very strong commitment to the community working in partnership. So that will be, there at that point, it'll be saying what strategies has the project team got to be working alongside the community it serves and the public money spent. So if we just go to the next one, Priya. So with the inputs, so the governance board will and the decision makers will give a decision on the strategy going forward. If it going as anticipated, it'll be there'll be ability to start working towards a best practical option, which as we've talked about throughout this process. It's the RMA principles and how you get to a single option. You can't just say we're going to do this. You have to discount other options. You have to talk about why this is the why this is should be followed and others discounted. That has to, and that drills back to project objectives largely as well. So executing it, that'll be the technical team. That's Waterken and other lead consultancies along with WDC, where we work in this together, and there's things that we're doing together, comms, engagement, and really just making sure that we do it right. The output thereafter will be presented to the Water Governance Board in the paper where we got to. So in terms of the project objectives, I've put, if you go to the next slide, Priya, I think we're there. I've just listed them again. They're actually littered throughout the papers and the messages that are within the project website. But I just wanted to keep coming back to them. The key things that I really look at, I can break them down into technical input and then partnership input. The key ones I like to really, really remember and talk to others about is recognise the significance of whaingaronga harbour to hapu and support the kaitiaki taki management of customary fishing. So again, there's strong statutory needs to meet. Let Māori have kaitiaki taki or guardianship practices installed, mitigate and in there. And there's also the Waikato District Council partnership with mana whenua and every other local government council with mana whenua that respects that and looks to strive towards that. The second part of it is to work in partnership with the community and hapu. And so when I look at that, I say, how do we meet that? How do we make sure that we get the cultural rights there that's embedded in statute? And it wouldn't be, if you didn't do that, you wouldn't get very far with any resource consent application. How do you make sure that the community representation and affected parties are heard, listen, and understand everything? So I've just put a strategies link there, and I'd like to go to the next slide, Pri, if that's cool. So I think that there's definitely there's three strategies that would have to occur, and that's with both hapu in the area. Affected parties, again, that's an RMA. You get a Section 95D group, which are those parties that are adjacent. It doesn't have to be immediate to any property. It doesn't have to be shared boundaries, etc. But it's just adjacent as everyone there's a decision made on adjacent by the processing planner. If you can see it, I'd say you're probably adjacent whatever site you are. So there'd be some sort of more focused attention that you'd have to really concentrate on those parties. When a suitable option arrives, it becomes more apparent, sticks up. Community representation. Equally, we've had great input from the community reps, the community board, and interested parties throughout this process, and they are the voice of many other groups. So again, there's that side of things as well, a strategy. Also the wider community, Raglan. If things get real, it's time to talk about it. And I know there's ability to do that, leaning strongly on WC Comms team and things. This is what they do and can help with that. Then with technical input as well. Again, then you look at how it adjusts to the project objectives, and then you get to a best practical option, a recommendation. In any case, you go straight to the Water Governance Board, has that lens on it by governing bodies, and so that's really in a nutshell how I see this process. I don't know. I try hard to explain these things. Sometimes I don't get 100% right. So let me just let me know now if you think there's any sort of grey areas.
Look, I think. Oh, sorry, Keith, but yeah, I just think that this that's on the screen at the moment is good. That gives you a good breakdown of where you're going, where you've been, and where we're heading to. So I think that you've got things covered off, and as I said earlier on, it's all of that early engagement and all of that work that you've done, front-ended, is getting us to this stage. So yeah, I think you've done, explain that okay.
I just Steve, I just wanted for the residents here, one of the affected parties, of course, is being Waikato Regional Council and their involvement in this, and I was wondering if we haven't talked much about them, if we should just talk about how they.
They're the regulator.
Yeah, correct.
So it'll be involved. Yeah. So they've got to be involved. It's really been great that Hugh and Ed, I think Ed's here, isn't he? They've been involved this throughout, and it's good to have that relationship, so they can say, cool, how we know that you are heading towards somewhere. We've been part of the Raglan experience ourselves, and we don't want to be having to in the middle of environment court things, which has been the processes in years past, if it can be avoided. But you're right, it's nothing new to the regional council. These things, they're doing it through other districts from here to Taupo, and they see the challenges. Hopefully we're doing it right, and we give them confidence that we're taking the steps to get to the right solution alongside the community and others.
I think also the feedback, the regional guys were on here last month at this hui, and I think the take I got was that they've been on this journey for a while now, and they're pretty happy with where you guys are all at with that. So that's good. Lisa.
Yeah, I was just going to echo those sentiments. Thank you, Steve. And just say that this screen for me, because sometimes it just washes over my head. I just go, oh my gosh, I've got a pea brain, So this is really great that you know, chunking it like this in a more simplified way. And if people want to delve deeper, then there's that information there. And to your point, Eugene, that Regional Council have been on this journey right through, which has been great. So yeah, thank you.
All right.
Oh man, I think we'll go to the next slide, Priya. This was just an opportunity to part of this journey is just for education, make sure that there is some understanding, and then it's not just technical things that the decision's already made, and it's like how can I comment on something I don't even really understand, or I've had the ability to read these documents. I've got a life to live. I'm not going to read a 50-page document. So I thought I'd sort of give the Steve 101 on how subsurface drip irrigation works in other places. It works anyway, and it is implemented in other places where consents use it. So what I have sort of 2 documents there, and I've got 3 images there. The first image I'll start with on the right. I've just put this isn't to any sort of scale. It was just to sort of demonstrate how SDI's basic principles of it works in a cyclic nature. You have fields, and you may have many more fields here. I've just selected 5, and say you'd say with the what we see here, say for instance, would be 20 hectares divided into 5 fields at 4 fields per hectare. And say where I've said 1, I'm just for irrigation on day 1. If there was 5 fields and you're working on a 5-day cycle, that would be where you'd irrigate. You'd actually have the subsurface drip lines would emit water, and it could be over a day, it could be intermittent over 12 hours, it could be more. This is part of the modeling that happens with it, and the decisions are made on the type of soil it is and the characteristics of the soil, the type and the weather conditions. So say on the next day, that same bit of land wouldn't get irrigated. You go into the next sort of field, you do a 5-day cycle. So say for instance, of a snapshot of 5 fields over 5 days, day 1 got irrigated that day. Day 5 has had days rest in between, and so it's going to be irrigated then, say on day 6. So does that make sense? It'll be the next one here after day 1 will be day 5 again, would be field 5. Maybe the other diagram sort of shows it. It just shows on day 1 when you put a lot of water into it, you get this big wetting pattern, and it doesn't look like that. It's sort of, I've sliced it in half, but it's a globe. Day 2, the area is resting, and then you get the water has been going through the soil processes, taken up by, in the summer the plants will be taking it up again in evaporation. Day 3, smaller. So then on the 6th day, or the return of the cycle, it'll be ready to be that'll be its day to be irrigated again. And so that's what happened.
Yeah, so it's like break feeding if you're farming. You know, you're taking stock from one area through to the other. For my simplified sort of way of thinking about it, then you go back once it's.
That's right. Within those rest days, within that feeding, what happens? The grass grows and
grows again. Awesome.
And so the image here, I've used it a few times, and this is how they're doing it in Palmery. They've got different soil characteristics to what we have in Raglan, but this is in their median strip, and they have a line there, and that's the 15 or 20, I'm not sure, centimeters in the ground for subsurface drip. The reason you do there's a little bit of wetting there. They've just dug it up for some reason, but it was useful for us to take that photo. So that's one concept of it. So I've got a few other descriptions about the terminology used with subsurface drip. So the next slide, please, Priya. So taking that example and saying we've got 1,000 meters cubed per day of highly treated wastewater. That's a lot that's a lot of water. Saying how's it going to be disposed in that way, particularly over the winter time or when it's raining? Gets tricky. So I'm just going to break it down into some quick steps. So using the other example, if we have 20 hectares of soils that are suitable for SDI, I've divided them into 5 zones or fields, and that's just image below, bringing it back. A 5-day return, or meaning 4 hectares per day is irrigated. As I said, a single field is irrigated. So if there's if we've got 1,000 meters cubed, we've got an area that's going to be irrigated of 4 hectare, we have 250 meters cube per hectare in that one day. And so then if you're looking at the terminology, you often hear it when they're talking about rain, you get 1 millimeter of rain, 30 millimeters of rain. That is 1 millimeter of rain is to 10 meters cubed per hectare. So when you think about it in those terms, if there is 250 meters cubed, that's 25 times 10, then you have 25 millimeters. So you're actually putting in 25 millimeters of irrigation per hectare on that day. When you break it down into that 5-day cycle, which we talk about, you have 5 millimeters per day. That's how it's described. Again, if you want to take a, I know with other projects, if you want to take quite a light dosing, you'd have 3 millimeters per day for, say, surface drip. The soils can take it. So that's the best way I can sort of describe how you can get such huge quantities of treated wastewater and other sort of processes that we hope that in other parts of working discharge solutions in New Zealand, this is how they describe it. It's very simplistic. There's complex modelling, field selection that are reserved for seasons and weather. You'd reserve some areas and say, look, we've got rain, etc. It'll be operators saying this. We will divert to this area here that are put in reserve for it. This is how subsurface drip is managed. It's quite complex, but other places do it, and this is just part of life. It's a lot easier to put it into a point source discharge. But again, this is the Raglan story. We have to really look at the subsurface drip for the community and hapu. This is the aspirations we're working toward. Most of the soil capacity with this scenario is reserved for rainfall. So this is the information we get from experts. You don't just do it. You just to a point that so super saturated. You have to reserve that for natural processes. Sheet water doesn't commingle with the subsurface flow. Heavy storms, that's the advantages of the subsurface drip irrigation versus surface drip. Big floods where you see sheet water going into gullies, etc. Even on farms and stuff, that's collecting the water, the nitrogens, the phosphoruses, E. coli into waterways. There isn't that co-mix. There wasn't that co-mingling. So I've just put a quick link to a paper that takes it to the next level. If there's anyone that's keen to read it through that.
I was going to say, Steve, too. There's a really useful website that's from a drip line supplier. There's a New Zealand company called Netafim. So if anybody was interested just to see what a quick little video of what a drip line working at that 3 millimeters per day, it's got a good descriptor in there. They went to www.netafim.co.nz. There's a good visual there if they want to see how that drip works.
Cool.
Just before we carry on, Steve, John's got a question that he's typed in there. Can you see that?
I saw it pop up and it went away, so I'm just going to bring it up again.
Right.
What can the Mangatawhiri site take? Is it 1,000 meters cube per day, or what? What is the predicted treated flow? Yeah, this is where I I've used 1,000. You can grasp it. It was just for demonstration purposes, and so for this one, for the Mangatawhiri site, this is where there has been theoretical investigation to say with these predicted flows through growth to 2055, when there be a theoretical 35-year consent, with these soils, which is different to other parts, and are these sort of discrete blobs, you could take the water for most of the time. I haven't got exact volumes again, as John, as we talked a little bit about earlier. We're going to be with the basis of design and the work that would be going to the conveyance thing will be better known. Theoretically, the flows, and remember earlier on I showed the milk tankers and the type of volumes. We've taken that and sort of said, okay, well that's status quo. What about in year 2055, end of consenting? There's going to be a lot of growth in there, and so the understanding is that the soils are of an ability to take most of the water. Again, as I've sort of started to really talk about what happens when we get these weather bombs, things that we can't even understand anymore about El Ninos, La Ninos. There's going to be times where the winter storage isn't going to be able to counter that, and there has to be a relief valve system in place. It's just facts for any system, and so at those point in time, I've talked about it here, and I've sort of checked in with Hapu as well. This is something that we have to talk about soon. It's sort of, there will have to be a relief valve, which will be some sort of, I'm not sure how it may work, but it'll be to water, and there might be some intermediate things in there to make it noa, and that's a discussion to be had. Getting this far, which I'm biting off in smaller parts, getting something that can do 95% of it is just a start for me. I think another message came up.
Oh, sorry, Stephen. Can I just add to your conversation there? Is that even with the demonstration there on the fields, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, lots of hectares. The picture should and will show another section which we can utilise also for a couple of reasons. One being a reserve area. So if we have land that fails for whatever reason, then we've still got other land that we can utilise. And two is from a growth perspective. We may not put in all the fields that we need today, but when we get out to 2055, we may need more land. So we'll have that in reserved and to be able to do that.
Yeah, it comes to site specific observation, working with the land, and there's parts of the land on even the subject site, and when there's water everywhere, this area remains dry. That's the bit that you reserve for these 1 in 100-year storms that happen annually.
1 in 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's another question there from Lisa too. Can you see that, Steve?
Yeah, I can read it out actually. If we go ahead with any land-based treatment, will we also include plantings on site to help treat the flow or as mitigation, like wetlands do? So I guess the planting that would be envisaged would be with any subsurface drip system. Best practice is to have a 20-meter setback from waterways. So within that 20-meter setback, what do you have? You could have some grass that's going to grow gorse, or you could have plantings, etc. Envisage that plantings is probably a better option. In terms of it, the plantings, what we're really talking about is vegetation. If we have plantings within riparian areas, they're there for good. The vegetation that you have is the cropping or the cut and carry. So the cut and carry is the fields having a grass or lucerne or whatever the best system is to take up water and use that water for reuse. Earlier on, when we were optioneering toward what's the best practical option for a wastewater treatment plant, there was other treatment plants that wouldn't treat it as purely for nitrogen, phosphorus. That would have been taken up by the plants and taken away with cut and carry. With the scale of economies and how more reliable and modular the an MBR is, that is the nutrients have been stripped quite clean out of that. So we actually, the water there will be having almost no nutrients in it. And if you were doing it for a farming business, you might even have to put fertilizer in it, but you'd never ever do that with this. It would just be counterintuitive to do that. So basically, plant growth, you're hoping to take up the water in the summertime to get a cut and carry product. And that's what they're doing in Taupo. They do a surface irrigation there. They have a cut and carry, and that's sold for feed.
Thanks, Steve. Crystal, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. So basically, we're looking at leasing this land, but just for the subsurface. Or in fact, does that mean that it gives us the opportunity to do that cut and carry working with the farmer? I'm not quite certain what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And the other question was, is this sloping land or is it flat land or is it? Yeah.
So everything's a bit slopey in Raglan. So then a lot of land is discounted. Theoretically, any sort of secure arrangement, that'll be part of MOU discussions, perhaps. An MOU is just to say even to work to that phase. It's not known, but at least it gives you a basis to say there's confidence that I'd take to the Water Governance Board that this seems like quite a feasible solution. How does it stack up against other solutions? What have you done to here? I mean, if they might say this is a $100 million, $1,000 million project. Okay, where to from here? That's just what we're gonna. This is part of going to the governance board. Okay, we go back to, does it default to the public land? We did a lot of research on that as well. And we got to the point where the major affected party is the Parks and Reserves team. That's their asset that they're doing on behalf of the people. And so that was saying, cool, if that was if the public land is the option, there's not going to do. Again, we've talked about the clayey soils there. That doesn't have much chop for this project. The sandy soils below, there could be some sort of high rate discharge there. That's a discharge solution that's been looked at every consenting process through the years. And it's sort of, it's different now. We're in a different era. We've got an MBR, different quality. So that's something that would have to be looked at there as well. So in terms of how does it work for this land? We haven't, and how we're going to secure it. That's with the experts still, and this forum is where we can actually bring everyone on board as things progress there. I'm not sure where that is at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. I from the previous question, I'd leapt ahead and thought, are we further down this track? No, okay, thank you. And I just had a second question, if I may, and that is, I understood that potentially this solution was going to be a summer solution, but may not be a winter solution. But do we know that yet?
Yeah. So then again, that's with the quality, with a lesser quality with clayey soil, say, and which we showed a plan last time about the soil, the soils, and a lot of it's clayey and tight, and it's features of Raglan. And some of it is a bit looser and younger alluvial soils. Where if you the thing there, say if you just put a piece of land, it can only, and you dug deep into it and it was a clayey soil, you could put some water on it over summer. It wouldn't be a discharge solution. It would be purely a reuse solution. It wouldn't take those volumes we're talking about. So you'd have to be. So again, it's theoretical. You might take 90% of it in summer, and winter, even with winter storage, you wouldn't be able to use it. The characteristics of this loamiest soil, which is along the hills, and this side and others, that's the feature that gives it more of a year-round ability to take water. Again, there's going to be some instances, unprecedented incidences where there's not going to be enough storage because on winter you're relying on winter storage at the plant that it can't even do that. So if you don't have a relief valve, you're looking at a point where even it's so torrential that even those ponds overflow, and then you're overflowing into a stored water into the stream that runs around the plant into the harbour. So your best option there would be to maintain some sort of tidal discharge. How it may look on that hasn't even been looked at just yet, and it'll be careful discussion with the community and Hapu.
Okay, right.
And-
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just quick go to Mike. Yeah, so that the MOU, our property team working on that MOU with Stephen and the team will, get to that situation around leasing, purchase, etc. So that'll all go through the water governance board, but also it's also up to the property owner as well on what they want to do with it. So but that will be flushed out at during that MOU's discussion. So Mike.
Yeah, so just a couple of things. The solid waste down in the treatment plant, where's that going? The stuff that the residue, what's happening to that?
So generally that'll be landfilled. So we've still got rag and the like that'll be picked up in the screenings, and then from a sludge perspective, some of it gets wasted and put back through the system. But in an MVR, generally that's then picked up, dewatered, and put into a bin, and then taken off to landfill.
So where is that going to be local, or is it going to be taken over the hill, or what's the plan?
At the moment, it would be Hampton Downs.
Right. Okay. And then with the land option, just talking about the annual, capacity and what it can take. If we do this deal, given that it's going to take a long time to get the funds to get pump the whole thing set up, the drip lines and the reticulation and everything like that, pumps, is there opportunity to get that land and lease? I made a comment about planting, but you could actually increase the capacity of the land significantly by getting vegetated or cover on it that just starts building up humus layers and soils and stuff that will actually increase its holding capacity. Is that one of our options we're looking at?
No, there's I just saying that the time between any solution that gives the regional council confidence to give us to provide a land discharge consent is not going to be immediate. You're right, the wastewater treatment plant upgrade is going to be immediate, but there's funding thereafter. I mean, there's funding set aside thereafter to put these fields in. Again, I don't know. I don't think that's the timing is still to be worked out. Again, in other places, you think about a conveyance line that could probably be put in and the discharge fields would be constructed at that time. And again, when you put it, the soils are like they've been over by land care and the people that the experts that we've engaged to do it, they are suitable.
Could they be enhanced? If we've got time, could we start preparing them to try and enhance that capacity?
Yeah, I'm not. I haven't. It's come at an obtuse angle. I haven't even really thought about that. Could be. I will tell you what. I'll check in and get some answers on that.
My my intuition would tell me that the soil structure is the bit that is the limiting factor. And even if we were to compost or to rotary hoe in other material, by the time that's digested back into the land, it really doesn't solve the structure of the land. So sandy humus soils are generally sandy humus soils. Clay is generally clay. You can't do a lot to it other than import it. And when you go back to that slide and the way that Steve described how the water uptake within the soil is taken, and how far the drip line is buried in, it would be quite a feat to change the soil structure of 20 hectares of land or more in order to be able to accommodate it. I think you can certainly change the top layer, no two ways about it, but it may not make a big significance in the way that the water can be transported through the soils just based on its geo.
I accept that, Keith, but I'm just thinking, in terms of holding capacity, if land is treed, it's gonna the runoff is much slower than if it's, say, in grass or other types of coverage.
It's an easy query. Then I can get that quickly to our experts tomorrow and get a response to you. I'll send it to you, and we'll flesh that one out.
Cheers.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks.
Yes. So, can I have this next slide, Priya? I forgot what we've got. Oh, I've just have a quick I just had a quick one there. It's sort of like we've been talking with Priya just about. I made some additional slides for this, and they weren't quite ready, and it was just to really cover some of the queries that were coming through last month. I've got some slides that include a transcript of the actual subject site and consideration of some of the queries that come through. I'll read one out. It says that I liked. It says, does the discharge generate contamination to the land, harbour or river systems, and what happens to the water table? Is there information and research available on the effects of subsurface drip irrigation, land discharge on surrounding groundwater and private bores? It's a very legit question, and I want to know that myself. So I've worked with our experts at Becca and some GIS experts to get some detail together about some information we know of the bore data at the site, other bores, and sort of understand where the groundwater is and the characteristics of groundwater. I can show that, but again, I really appreciate I was able to talk to a key stakeholder in that area, and just wanted to understand: am I getting, with information I'm providing, is it really going to help the community in that area understand things and just get to the drill down to the bottom of it? How can there be some certainty that this is not going to affect bores? And so I'm going to work a little bit more on that alongside the key stakeholder and our experts to get that through. So I'm hoping that we're going to get it. Me and Priya have got a date to get a vlog together. We've done vlogs before. It's just putting them up on the site, a 6 to 10 minute video, just to give a bit more of an update. But before the next meeting that we have, I'd say would be in 2 weeks' time. And so that was really all I prepared today. We can have question time closing.
Yep, that sounds great, Steve. If you could just take down the shared screen and yep, great, awesome. Thanks very much. First of all, John or Peter, do you have any further questions for the team?
Not from me, though. It might be useful to have some sort of timeline, because I'm still rather vague apart from you saying 2026 to implement it. How do we get to that? When do we find out the various questions I was asking earlier, the answers to those, and the other questions, and when does it go to resource consent? And is that assuming that there is no Environment Court involvement in getting to 2026? I'm wondering if that, maybe if not now, maybe for next time we could have some sort of timeline.
Definitely, there's no one's in there. We know that the treatment plant timeline, and we can sort of definitely make a slide on that and make it clearer. Those things we know, and other environmental factors, outside factors. That's what we talked about today. Things that we can that we're working really hard toward it. This is as you've know this journey. Some things you just say, oh, is this project drifting? We're trying not to drift. At a point in time, the regional council is saying, this is beyond our level of comfort. So we need to. They could say this. They could say either we need to process the consent. We've got an application in. It's for the status quo, and it can be processed. But again, you're saying if you do that, where do the resources go? It'll be going towards a shorter term consent, and the work that we're doing now for discharge optioneering will have to stop. Again, that's what I know that this is what happened in another place in the Waikato. It was the Cambridge consent. Mm-hmm. That's where they got to. But as long as we can just show that we're progressing and doing these sorts of things, we're going to get it. The timeline will iteratively become closer to understanding.
Yep, Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, Cambridge. That was an interesting call for them to do that, and I'd rather that we go for the long consent. But yeah, maybe John, Steve can provide at the next thing a sort of a timeline for the consenting process. Ultimately, like the upgrade of that, the MBA plant up and running, and then also the discharge timelines. Would that be okay, Steve, to have that for our next month?
I think it'd be really useful, even for the regional councillors. I mean, the regional the regional council people that come to this meeting. Yeah,
no, that'll be very good. So, okay, and thanks, Peter, for that comment. So, Peter has no more questions at this stage. So, do any councillors have any further questions?
No, just a comment, really. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Keith, so much for giving us your knowledge. Sharing that with us is really appreciated, because I know that it's into your own personal times, and Priya as well. Thank you, and fellow councillors, and Peter and John. That's awesome. Thank you, guys, and
Mike,
Eugene, of course.
Mike, you have your hand up.
Yeah. So just a question. It was on the radio this morning, Keith. You got asked about the route of the pipeline, given we don't know where roading's going yet up there. I mean, I'm assuming some of it will run up the existing Te Uruwai Road, will it?
I guess the conveyancing hasn't been finalised, because we don't, whilst we know roughly where the site might be, we don't know where the site might be. But generally, we would put pipes within the berm and within the road. That's the easiest way from a maintenance perspective to look after it. And so yes, we would aim to be within the public corridor.
Yeah, but where you don't know where the roads are yet up there, that could be a bit of a problem, because we just had an issue up at Pocono where we had to shift a water main at quite a considerable expense, because they didn't know. At the time, they made an assessment of where the road would be, but then they didn't get it quite right. So it's just, I just flagged that as an issue. Maybe as time goes on, you'll get some more clarity here, or maybe.
Yeah, it's a good point. Pocono wasn't quite as bad. It was certainly somebody not checking where the paper road was. But one thing we have got now is far better technology in terms of placement and understanding from an as-built perspective where that pipe is, and I think we would ensure that any private land easement is granted for that pipe, so that it's a known quantity early on, rather than a surprise to everybody going forward. And I think you're right, lessons need to be learned out of the Pocono Tuakau Hitchins Road pipeline. We wouldn't want a repeat of that.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
And also, too, Mike, I'm not sure about the whole details around the Pocono one, other than knowing what has happened. But I think during this process, other council departments have been working alongside these guys. So Steve mentioned before, Hazel and infrastructure planning team are working alongside you guys. So that will hopefully morph into a good understanding of where that sort of future road and infrastructure will be taking place as we get closer to that time. So
that's right. There was, again, with Waikato 2070 and the proposed district plan, there's areas have been rezoned in Raglan West and others, and are going to be rezoned in time. So again, there had to be a very so to accompany that with any planning, you start looking about the core infrastructure, roading, and as a secondary sort of consideration will be is the water and wastewater like reservoirs, how's it going to look, etc. Pump stations, where they're going to go. A lot of those are in corridors, as Keith said, within a reserve. So that's just work that's happening in parallel. There's slight crossover, but again, it's sort of at the moment that team is working on district plan appeals and having more of a structure plan for the area, and that's a piece of work that will be happening when ready with the community led by the Waikato District Council growth team.
Yeah, cool.
It's even as simple as making the pipe a purple pipe when it leaves the plant to the drip line, so that should we have the unfortunate circumstance of somebody mistaking that pipeline for potable. That, you know, there's a colour differentiation that allows them to differentiate between wastewater and potable.
They won't illegally tap into it. Eh?
No, and it has been the case in Australia.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. Alrighty.
Water's been collected.
Yeah. Oh wow. Alrighty. Oh, thanks. I'll just close off for us. E te atua, kia te tuki pai o mātou mahi e tēnei hui. Kia tau mai tō rangi mare e mehe mō ngākitanga. Amene.
Many.
Many thank you. Thanks, Priya, Keith, and Steve. Much appreciated. Thanks, John and Peter, for jumping in on this Zoom, and I hope it's keeps furthering your knowledge and association with what's going on. And also to my colleagues, good to see you all. And
Kia ora, Eugene. Good to see you. Thank you.
Good night. Keep safe, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you all.
Marie.
Bye. Bye.